Hi, I'm Rika Robbins from Rob Del Tony. If you followed me for any period of time, you know my favorite childhood movie is Thomas and the Magic Railroad, which just turned 25 earlier this month. However, what was released 25 years ago wasn't what Britt Allcroft had in mind. For the longest time, there's been a push to see the director's cut, and with it, the true vision that Britt had in mind when making this movie. In 2020, Shout Factory helped this cause by releasing a 20th Anniversary Blu-ray. One of the bonus features was something called Deleted Storylines, which had nearly every cut scene included as a bonus feature. A lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff revolving around this movie has been revealed over the years, but there's one story that currently remains untold, and that's the story of the Blu-ray itself. Well, that ends today. Recently, I interviewed the editor of all the Blu-ray's bonus features, and our discussion was very fascinating. I had previously tried to line up the interview for a podcast of mine that's currently on hiatus, Beyond the Lens, and it just didn't work out at the time. But late last year, we learned that Brit Allcroft unfortunately passed away, and I knew I wanted to do something to honor her. So, on this bittersweet 25th anniversary, this interview is dedicated to her memory. May she rest in peace.
Rico Robbins has been a Thomas fan since he was a little boy. All of us on the original Thomas team were completely united in the mission that we had and still have to bring fun, comfort, and inspiration into children's lives through the enchantment of storytelling.
Okay, can you tell me your name and what your role is at Ballyhoo Motion Pictures?
Yes, my name is Daniel Griffith, and I'm the owner of Ballyhoo Motion Pictures. Ballyhoo Motion Pictures is me.
Okay, why did you start Ballyhoo Motion Pictures? What was your goal with your company, or what you do as a filmmaker?
Okay, so when I started Ballyhoo Motion Pictures, it was really just to have a company identity to represent myself. So when I created stuff, it wasn't about me. The focus would be about the work, and then I was a creator of the work, but I didn't want it to be like me. I wanted to have an entity, so I didn't feel like I was just boasting about myself or anything like that, because it's just not my personality, it's not my character. When I started doing bonus feature documentaries, that is kind of when I moved to creating a company name. And it's interesting, the company name and the company logo have their own little story. So, but the word Ballyhoo has been a favorite word of mine since I was a kid. I grew up across the street from an amusement park that was owned by a bunch of carnies. A carnival family owned a traveling carnival, and they also owned this amusement park. And my grandmother, she had a background in house sitting and nursing, and would nurse their mother, who was very ill and bedridden. And I would go over as a kid and be around all of these carnival performers as they were practicing and things like that. So but a lot of terminology from the traveling carnival, you just kind of pick up on as a kid. And one of the words I just really loved, I loved the word ballyhoo, and I loved what it meant. And so I always knew that somehow that word would factor into something in my life. And when it came down to creating a company identity for myself, I kind of went right to ballyhoo.
How did you come to start producing bonus features for Shout Factory and other distributors? Did any previous release you worked on stand out to you in particular?
So when I started creating bonus features, it really came down to, I was working on a documentary about a film distributor, kind of a B-movie film distributor. That caught the attention of Shout. That, I guess at that time, they had just acquired the rights to the Mystery Science Theater 3000 series, the DVD rights. And so I guess they reached out to me because they thought what I was working on kind of fit into what they were doing and asked me if I would create content. And the thing I loved about doing the Mystery Science Theater 3000 collections was that I could do documentaries about movies that are riffed within the episodes that would never get kind of the Criterion treatment. And so I thought it would be really fun to seriously explore the making of these movies and give them a little bit more credit where credit's due, in a sense that even making the worst movie takes a certain degree of talent. You know, people that made even the worst movie aren't talentless hacks. The fact that they made something, it got distributed, and people watched it, whether people liked it or not. And certainly with these films, you know, date back 50, 60 years, the fact that it's still in the zeitgeist, that people still discuss it one way or the other, whether they're laughing at it or not, is a degree of genius there.
Okay, so were you familiar with Thomas, Shining Time Station, or Magic Railroad before working on the Blu-ray?
Yes. So I'm the oldest of my sisters and brother, and my brother's the youngest. And I was in my teenage years when he was born, and spent some time, you know, watching him periodically. And as he got a little bit older, watching him, and would watch stuff that he enjoyed watching. And one of them was Thomas, the Thomas the Tank Engine and the Shining Time Station stuff, as it would be aired on, I guess, public broadcasting. That's how I became familiar with it. But you can't really, I mean, you'll always know that that particular character, it was always around. It was, you know, you saw things in stores, whether it be toys or books. I was extremely familiar with it, and found it magical and endearing. And when the feature film came out, I was in film school, and I was a projectionist at a local movie theater. So I built the 35 millimeter print of that film, and I would often screen films the night before their release. We call it checking the print, but we're not checking the prints. We're watching the movie before anyone else does. And so I stayed and watched the film because I was really interested in it. And my first reaction was that it was charming, but it felt a little choppy, and it felt as if kind of like when you watch Superman 2, knowing that Richard Donner had created certain scenes, and then Richard Lester came in and created you feel like there's an unevenness, like there was a type of contention between the creative forces behind the movie that led to a film that wasn't quite what was I guess planned and coordinated from the beginning. Whatever the vision was, it felt incomplete.
How were you approached to work on what would ultimately become the bonus features for the Thomas and the Magic Railroad Blu-ray? How and why did the scope of that project change over time?
It's interesting. Okay, so I was approached to do the features in the beginning was because I had worked on a few projects where I had to kind of rebuild or reconstruct a film from raw materials, and I really loved that process. I was asked, hey, would you take a phone meeting with Brit Allcroft about potentially working with her to assemble a version of what she hoped to create with Thomas and the Magic Railroad, the feature film. And I was like, absolutely, I would love to. So I talked with her, and our conversation was pretty short at the beginning, but somewhere in that conversation, I heard a sadness and I guess a hesitant response to working on a project like this. But yet there was a heartbreaking kind of sound to her voice. I don't know. There was something there, and that I connected to it. I wanted to learn more. So I'd emailed her and asked her, hey, could we just have a conversation? I'd love to have just a conversation with you. And we could talk about, really anything, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about this. And so she started telling me, how, like what she'd gone through in the production, and how it was kind of this escaping hole in her career, this sort of unfinished business aspect of what she had done, that this may be an opportunity, however hesitant she is. And I told her I would love to work on this, and I'd love to tell her story, and I would love to I love to take whatever material there is and try to maybe make some kind of sense of it, make something come together that may be a comfort for her. Shout for There's a lot of legal reasons at that time that prevented Shout to fully take on like recreating her version of the film. Not that they weren't interested, but it was just a complicated task, and they weren't quite sure if that's something that they should take on, whatever reasons that they had. And I was really intrigued with it, and still am. I'm very much intrigued with it. I was from the beginning. The idea of trying to rebuild and Frankenstein together the closest to her vision as humanly possible. And so I went to her home and I spent a lovely day with her, an entire day. It took the entire day to film the interview. I filmed hours and hours of footage, and there's like many variations of stories and stuff that we would go through. And I knew that she was trying to be very, very diplomatic in her responses, but at the same time was encouraging her to be as open as possible and to be as honest as possible. And that was very important that, the world knew her side of the story. You have to remember at the time she was also writing her autobiography, and I don't know if that came out. Can you tell me if that came out or not?
I don't think so. I think she was still working on it when she passed.
Because I know that months and months later, after we finished the material, she sent me excerpts where she wanted to talk about the release and talk about getting it out there and everything. And she sent me excerpts, like a couple of paragraphs, where she mentions me and the relationship that we had working together, because we worked very closely for about 5 months. And so she wanted to mention it. She just wanted to get my approval of using my name and everything. I was like, it's fine, whatever. I was just happy to help a person that I deeply respected, and over the course of time talking with her, you can't help but just kind of fall in love with her vision and her passion and her sincerity, and I was just happy to play a very small role in helping her heal a few wounds from her past. I don't think we really achieved what we all hoped to in that window of time. And I think part of it was that we were, the time that I filmed her interview was the holidays right before the pandemic really hit. As a matter of fact, when I filmed the interview with Alec Baldwin in New York, he on the cab ride to the airport back from filming that interview, the cab driver had the radio on, the news on, and they were talking about certain cities were starting to shut down, and that there were people that were booked on flights and airports going to those cities that are stranded. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to get out of New York in time to get back to Atlanta? And I remember all that happening during the course of filming the interviews for this. And that's why there's several interviews that are on that are done Zoom, because there was no other way to do their interviews. It was intended, several of the people we had lined up to film, it was intended to get them on camera, and never did. And that's kind of a thing with me that I feel like is my unfinished business with this project, because I overshot a lot of material with Britt, and I had hoped that there would be an opportunity someday for me to make an honest to God documentary that really delved into everything with more detail and included more interviews, and that's a thing that just I guess won't happen. But I was hoping that there would be a possibility down the road to make that work.
What was, you sort of went into this, like, what was your impression of the theatrical version of Thomas and the Magic Railroad as a film, without knowing all the behind the scenes stuff necessarily? Like,
yeah, as I mentioned, watching it for the first time, I was sitting in a movie theater all by myself watching it, so I felt that it was uneven, and it was clear to me that there were aspects of it that weren't fully realized. But all that aside, I think it's a beautiful film. I love the sincerity of the Thomas stories. I like that something so endearing exists in this world. It's sort of like when you revisit. I grew up with Mr. Rogers, so when you revisit Mr. Rogers, I still still love as an adult watching Mr. Rogers, I still love Mr. Rogers episodes. And I think the reason why I love it is because in some roundabout way, it's a part of a world, and like with Thomas, it's a part of a land. With Mr. Rogers, it's part of a neighborhood that you really do wish that you inhabited. Things would be, whatever obstacles you face, they would be so simple to figure out and overcome because you seem to be surrounded by friends who truly have the best intentions, and more importantly, they're supportive and there for you. And I think the reason why people connect to something like Thomas today is that sense of support and warmth. And Thomas goes through all these different obstacles, gets himself into trouble, and but he's never alone in finding that solution. It's never just up to Thomas. And I feel like there's an aspect of that. There's all these components kind of all working together, and I liked it. I still like the film. I actually took my kids to the Fathom anniversary screening event, and it's the first time they had ever watched the film, and it was great to watch the film with them and see how they responded to the story.
What did you make of Britt's story about the executive meddling by the studio that resulted in all the various material that was cut from the film?
So when we got to that part in the interview, she needed to take a moment and clear her head. And then she went through all of it, and she was trying to do it in a way that didn't seem vindictive, angry, or because it's really not her. I mean, it's not her. I would say it's not her character. Clearly, she's passionate, and with passion, sometimes when you want to fight, you have to fight for things. Sometimes you have to fight for visions. You have to fight for opportunities, and I think she had to do a lot of that. And what's great about it, as she's telling about her experiences, the thing that was so special was that she wasn't fighting for herself. She was fighting for the vision. She was fighting for the characters. She was fighting for the story. And all of this was important to her. And to disrupt any aspect of it just because someone that doesn't quite understand but thinks that they understand what kids want, but not understand the character and the story that she created. That conflict, really, I think it really affected her. The thing is, she didn't give up. I think that she fought as hard as she could, and without being there on the set, I think I got the impression through others, but being there on the set, not being there on the set, made it. Makes it hard for me to really understand but I can only imagine by how she described it and how others described her as a director and a storyteller on the set. She did her best to work with them and find compromises that made everybody happy, but she did fight for the integrity of, and I think she did it so stealthily that most of the cast didn't quite pick up on it. They may have been clued into it by others, but Alec Baldwin, I asked him many times, and he told me that you wouldn't have known that she was going through all of that in the background. He had sort of found out as they were in the post-production part, certainly when they were having to do some of the additional work towards the end of the production. But yeah, I know that it was important for her to convey what she tried to do, but it was also important for her to convey it in a way that wasn't bitter and vengeful or anything like that. Again, it's not her character, even though it hurts. I feel like she was trying really hard to get her side out and how she felt out and be honest about it, but in a way that was also respectful.
Did you think that the deleted scenes and storylines would have improved the story if they were left included in the film? Why or why not? And if they did, how much would you say it would have improved it?
Okay, so I was in a wonderful position, and this happens every once in a while. When I'm working on a project where I work with the director or the main creative body on a film, and I get access to, probably in the hands of, like, let's say in the hands of anyone listening, anyone that's interested and have been fans of Thomas all their life, they would be like, in the presence of like maybe the Holy Grail or something like that. But it's like she sent me all this material, and then she said, look, I was looking around for any type of elements. All we have are these dailies, and they're all on VHS, because at the time, when they would transfer the material, it would be to like a VHS, and the director would have a VHS cassette player in their hotel or wherever they're staying, and they would watch the dailies sometimes at night, take notes, so she had all these dailies, and so she just sent me this. There's like 4 boxes, just jammed with VHS tapes, and they're each labeled things like, day 4, camera B, B-roll 6, or whatever. It's just like just an entire mess. So I first took all the tapes, and in my office floor, I put them all in sequential order of the dates and sequence of camera A, camera B, camera C, and and then I brought out my I have a nice VHS deck encoder, and I encoded all this footage. Hours and hours and hours and hours of footage, and take after take after take, gaff after gaff after gaff. It was actually amazing. And because I've always been an editor, I looked at it as like, I'm not going to try to fix anything. I'm just going to take this footage, and I'm going to be the editor of this version of Thomas and the Magic Railroad. And she sent me her shooting script with all of her notations of what she thought was the best take. And I just followed the shooting script like an editor. I would follow the notations from the director, follow the script, and start assembling this. And there were a lot of things that were in the script, but I couldn't find footage for. And she would say, well, that may be on this tape or maybe on this tape, but it may be lost. And so there were a couple of scenes that I didn't have anything to represent, but for the most part, I assembled the entirety of the film. And where I didn't have something, if it existed in the final film, I would cut to that and just use what's there. And there were some effects things that weren't finished. And I thought if I did this, that I might get Shout interested in the prospect of, hey, we've got this long version, and this may be kind of cool. But there was, like I mentioned, and this is not Shout. Shout is amazing. Shout is an amazing company, and always have the fans' best interest at heart. I know just from behind the scenes how much they struggle to create the best representation of whatever film or series that they're putting out. They really do the best they can. They don't. I don't think that they're at fault. And to be honest, I'm not sure the rights holders are at fault. It just seemed like something. Sometimes people are motivated by fans wanting something so much they have no choice. A good example would be, the release the Snyder Cut thing, which is a very rare thing to happen, where fans, they were so loud and omnipresent and really pushed and held strong, and that you had something that it really honestly right moment, right time, because we hit the pandemic, and it was kind of like, Warner Brothers was like, what do we have? HBO was like, what do we have? And like, oh, we have this film that everybody wants to see, and we can kind of finish it, and we have some kind of event thing that we don't have to do an incredible amount of work for. And I think it was just it was a perfect symbiosis of these different elements working together, whether they be tragic or not. And I think that I really don't know why or how that cut could come together. It's certainly, I think there's probably an aspect where they're like, it's all VHS tapes of this. It's not going to look spectacular. And I think there's a way to make it work. My thought was, there's so many films that I would love to see. An example, a big Orson Welles fan would love to see Magnificent Ambersons in the version that he created, intended. And I know there have been many attempts and there are versions out there, but if someone said there's VHS footage of all the takes, we could assemble from it and get close to the vision, I would be 100% let's see it. That would be exciting, just to kind of get an idea. I think that people, their imagination can fill in the holes, and we can certainly, as I looked at the footage, I saw her vision. I was just excited to see things take shape that change the story. And I do think that the vision that she had was a better vision for the film. I think it maybe ahead of its time, because maybe at that time what people wanted out of what they considered to be a children's feature, a film geared towards kids, they probably didn't want so much depth of character, and maybe didn't want the conflicts to be too dark, maybe is the best way of saying it. Maybe I feel like that probably was one of the main reasons they moved in that direction. But the one thing that Britt would always say, kids are smart. There's darkness in the world, and kids find ways to work through it, to create something, let's say, that's a little bit more serious, and maybe deals with subject matter that might be a little bit more difficult for them. I think that in the end, in this world that she's created, this land that she's created, I feel like they would be better for it coming out, understanding what she was trying to do and where these characters were going, and they would learn something about life and how they would handle with some of those situations that many of us encounter.
Okay, so were you aware of the Thomas fans' collective passion for getting the cut material released to the public?
Yes, I was through her, and I think this was her response to the many fans that had reached out to her, and this was her trying to do the best she can to appease is the wrong word. She was not trying to do anything just to make everybody happy. I think she was doing it because she thought it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing for the film, and that was her vision. And I think through her I learned a lot about the fans and the fans' response to the film and what the fans hoped for. I tried to do the best I could, given my limitations, to help her make the fans happy.
What went into planning and producing what would be the various bonus features that were included?
Before the pandemic hit, I wanted to make a documentary. I love when I find a story that I really believe in. Being able to tell that story as in depth and dramatic as humanly possible. And I wanted to tell her story. And because I really loved who she was, I just wanted to do something that celebrated her creation, all of her work. I really wanted to pay tribute to that. And she was so sweet and passionate, and at the same time, I loved. There's a twinkle in her eye that I could tell she could be aggressive about certain things. Again, always to serve what she's trying to do, not to serve herself. But I love that experience with her, and so I wanted to tell that story. But when the pandemic hit and became like we were running out of time, and the process of assembling all this stuff so it could be used in some capacity on the release was taking up a lot more time than I was budgeted for. And but I did it anyway, and I gave so much man hours to that that I really didn't care that I was getting back as far as financially, and it became complicated to create a documentary. I at that time I never thought of Zoom as a way to facilitate the lack of being able to film interviews in person. I always traveled and filmed interviews. The interview that you see with Britt is really just me and Britt at her home for about it was almost 10 hours. So that was me. I was always just me and a camera, and I travel and I film because I wanted that trust and that form of intimacy there, where they're comfortable with me and they know me and they know that I'm here to represent them. I wanted them to understand that was important to me. That their story is safe with me. It's protected. So when I realized I couldn't travel to film all the interviews that we were lining up. Luckily I'd gotten a few of them right before we went into lockdown, but I did travel to get Alec Baldwin. That was all because of timing. He had a window of time, and I had to jump on it immediately to make it work. The rest of the stuff there ended up being Zoom, and there were several people that I would have filmed interviews with that were lined up, but it became a complicated thing because most of the people didn't understand understand Zoom or didn't see that as a platform that they could use to do an interview or to be conducting an interview on. So, it was like now, people say Zoom, people like use Zoom all the time. People use Zoom to communicate with family members that are not living with them, that are living in some other state or some other country or whatever. But at the time, it was not something that people understood, and getting them to do that was really complicated. And many times they say, we could do one over the phone, but we can't do it. And I couldn't make sense of stuff I filmed and then stuff I did on Zoom, combining those elements together to build a narrative like I wanted to. I couldn't quite make that work. And so I settled on using the stuff that I had and just creating a series of featurettes. And that ended up being the only solution at the time. If the project had come about even a couple of months earlier, I would have probably had everything in the can that I needed. And during lockdown, I could have edited everything together. But the timing was wrong.
There was an Amazon listing for that Blu-ray. It first appeared in March with the release date of June 9th, but then it was later delayed. Was it just simply because of the pandemic, or was there another reason?
I think it was that, and also they were working on a deal with Fathom, and I think that might have played into it a little bit. I just remember finding out that it got pushed, and that gave me a little bit more time, but that was about it. And this took a lot. This was an undertaking that was very important to everyone involved, especially Britt and Shout. Shout really wanted to make sure that Britt was happy with everything that was being done, and that was very important to them. And so there could have been an aspect of where certain things had to be maneuvered to help facilitate what she'd hoped to achieve with the release.
One thing I do want to know is you mentioned how a lot of the interviews apart from Britt and Alec were done over Zoom. So is there a reason why out of the three remaining, the Mara Wilson, the Diddy Khan, and Hummingman, why only Diddy Khan appears on screen?
Yeah, they just didn't want to be on screen using Zoom. Diddy Khan didn't care. It's pretty simple. Now we're all accustomed to it. You watch the news and you'll see interviews with certain people. They're done through Zoom or some other platform. So, at that time it was different. People weren't used to it and couldn't quite prepare. I've got the video of them, I've got the Zoom of Mara, talking. It's like I've got that there. I could sit and watch her talk. But what I ended up using was not.
What was it like conducting the various interviews between Brit Allcroft, Alec Baldwin, Mara Wilson, Diddy Khan, and Hummingman? And do you have a favorite interview?
So let me answer the last part first. My favorite was Britt. Essentially because it was the most important interview for me. I really did fall in love with, her sincerity and determination and her passion, and I just thought she was wonderful. A wonderful person. And it was important for me to service her and her vision and what she hoped to achieve with this release. I wanted to be the conduit between her and the distributor and try to make sure that I did everything I could in my power to make her happy. And I know Shout wanted everything I wanted her to be happy. I know Shout was very, very passionate about, doing everything they can to help her release something that would be closer to what she had hoped. And, the best way we could have done that was including those deleted scenes. But I have funny stories about Alec Baldwin. I went up to film Alec Baldwin's interview in New York, and he had just come from filming Saturday Night Live, a segment where he was playing Trump. And so he came straight from there to the hotel where I'd set up to film his interview. And he was amazingly, he was hilarious. And I had always been an Alec Baldwin fan. As a matter of fact, I took advantage of the opportunity to tell him how much I loved The Shadow. I think The Shadow is just an amazing movie, and I thought he was very great. It's just really great person. He's just really, really amazing actor, and it was really neat. But it was a weird time period because where I was staying, the hotel I was staying at was just maybe 2 or 3 blocks from Trump Tower, and and I got when I packed up my gear and was leaving the hotel to catch a cab, I had to walk several blocks down because at that same moment there was this massive protest that was blocking all the roads, and they were protesting out all from outside Trump Tower all the way down, and I remember walking several blocks with all my gear to catch a cab because I had to get to the airport, and it's just a weird time of like people aren't certain about what's going on with this illness that seems to be impacting everybody, and there was all these things going on. It was just a weird kind of experience and it was a very political experience because it was just like it was just I want to say it was a weird time, but we're living in a weird time. But I thought that was interesting. It was an interesting, just like a combination of all these weird things happening. That was the last interview I filmed in person until the pandemic eased up, and I started shooting some stuff local in Atlanta, like certain actors or whatever, they're in town or whatever, I'd shoot stuff. But that was the last interview I shot for almost a year, maybe almost a year and a half that I actually filmed. So it was interesting. My last interview there was Alec Baldwin.
So you talked about like how you got all the tapes from Britt, and so that explains why there's been a lot of cut material, even not just the deleted scenes, like the bloopers and outtakes and other stuff that's in the Return to Shining Time documentary. So was all that material sourced from Brit Allcroft directly, or was there some things still archived by the rights holders?
No, everything that I used came directly from Brit, her archive. She sent me boxes of stuff. She had an assistant that was helping her at the time go through everything, and I opened the door one day and there were 3 heavy boxes filled with stuff. The script was neat because I also had a lot of doodles from her. She kind of doodled sort of these little storyboard scenes, and it was really neat seeing all that, and all of her handwritten notes, and she sent me lots of photographs to scan that were all about her life. It was pretty neat. There's a lot of neat things there. There's a lot of things that I would say, of all the things I accumulated in that project, I might have used 30 to 40% of. So there's a lot on the cutting room floor.
I don't know if you're going to be able to talk about this, but what was the reason the deleted scenes placed on the Blu-ray were like a standalone feature as opposed to a full-fledged director's cut? Was it out of legal reasons, practical reasons?
There are a whole slew of considerations that would come from having to rebuild a full-fledged director's cut. Britt had concerns because there were certain effect scenes that we either didn't have access to or they were never completed. And the fact that it was all VHS footage, if we had access to the film elements, that probably would have went a longer way with convincing Shout to convince Sony to really put up the effort. So it was like we have this VHS footage, so it's not going to look great. That is one aspect that was a roadblock. Not knowing where that film footage is, that search continued on. I remember the last communication I had with Britt, she was still looking for it, and it was like years later. It was like 2 years after, I guess, we were dealing with this. I think those are mostly, and I mean, there are some rights related things, but I think those would have been handled. I think those are mainly problems that were faced at the time. It just wouldn't have been an attractive prospect. And it's possible that everyone involved thought that the film elements would turn up and that opportunity would present itself. And when it did, people would be more motivated to jump on the opportunity to release a director's cut. I don't think it's because no one was interested in it, or I don't think it was because no one involved was interested in it, because I know that Shout found it intriguing, and I know Britt was very passionate about it, and I was very, very, very committed to whatever it would take to right a type of wrong in Britt's life. So that being said, I mean, I still hope that the footage somehow turns up somewhere, but I don't know.
So on the Blu-ray, it's called Deleted Storylines. Is there a reason why that name was chosen?
Yes, because they're not technically deleted scenes, because scenes would be fragmented. My thought was, since we couldn't assemble the film, that we could at least take the storylines that were cut and assemble them. so that you could watch the thread of certain characters. You could see the whole thread of that, as opposed to watching one scene after the other, kind of that. I felt like that would be better to kind of put it together as a type of story arc, as opposed to just a deleted scene. That might have been partly my decision.
What level of involvement did Britt have with the creation and editing of the deleted storylines? And what was it like working with Britt on this Blu-ray release?
Oh, as I mentioned, I loved working with her. It was a thrill. She basically sent me all the elements and sent me her shooting script and any notations. When I was hung up on something, I would call and ask her, and she was very, very approachable for me. I mean, I had access to her. I think there was a couple times I called really late, and she was like, "Call me late, call me whenever. I really want to be able to be here to service whatever you need." And so, yeah, I was kind of left alone. I'd done enough of this kind of work to know that if I followed the script and I looked for the right takes, there were several times that there wasn't notation for which take she preferred, and I kind of used my instinct as an editor of like which ones work better, and just tried to do, I tried to do the best I could and make sense of what I had at my disposal.
So I assume there was like some sort of restoration process for all the various sources for the deleted storylines. What did that process look like?
There wasn't really a restoration process. I really just encoded all the tapes in the best ability that I had. I cleaned up some of the sound because there was some sound issues, and ultimately, I think that was it. I didn't do too much to restoration work. It was mainly taking raw elements and assembling them, and then doing a little cleanup to try to make them more presentable the best way I could. There was not really much you could do with old VHS tapes that had been stored in probably not the best climate conditions. So. You really just do the best you can. It's better than nothing, I guess. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I thought, if this is all we get, it's better than getting nothing at all.
Why did you decide to include the storyboard opening at the beginning of the deleted storylines? And out of curiosity, is there more of that storyboard animatic in existence?
So there were animatics for lots of scenes, and I had access to them because they were the best visual representation of the Thomas footage that would be inserted into the film. So the whole goal was like, while the editor is assembling the live action footage, the editor would have something to represent the scenes that were still being done that were Thomas related. And that way they could build the timing and sort of get an idea of how the show was going to take shape. And so I had some access to those things, and I used that, I think, to plug in a scene that either didn't get completed the way she wanted to. I can't really remember now. I was motivated by something. It might have been motivated by the fact that this is really cool and we should use some of it. It could have been that simple. But I do know that there were a lot of tapes that had some animatic stuff on. And there were one or two things that I had storyboard art for that I animated somewhere in that process. Yeah.
On the movie's soundtrack, there was a Walt, Some Things Never Leave You by Joe Henry. This was intended to be featured on that black and white scene that was included in the deleted storylines, where a young Grandpa Burnett and Tasha are seen romantically dancing by an apple tree outside Burnett's cottage. However, the deleted storylines instead featured an instrumental cue from the film's original score by Humming Man. Why was that the case? Was it just a music rights clearance issue?
Yes, it's a music rights clearance issue. There wasn't a way to get that cleared at that time. Yeah, it was more of a either cut the scene and not include, or find a workaround so at least people can see the scene. And I thought it was more important to see the scene than anything else. So. Yeah.
In the promotional trailer that Shout Factory released, there was work print footage seen of P.T. Boomer following Thomas onto the Magic Railroad. And in this footage, it's really just a real prop or some sort of ATV with a smoke machine on board. But for whatever reason, that wasn't included in the deleted storylines feature. Was the reason for its omission.
when I saw your question for that, I looked back through everything, and I honestly don't know why it wasn't included. Because that trailer thing, they ultimately used stuff that I sent to them. So it had to been extrapolated from something that I produced and sent to them. So I can't quite figure out why it didn't make it somewhere on that disc. I looked through everything and I was like, I don't know. They got this from me. They didn't get it from any other source. So I don't know why. Yeah.
So was there any footage that you wish was included in the digital storylines that for one reason or another was cut from the final Blu-ray release?
No, I also reviewed everything, and I think we included everything that we could on this release. There was not much more we could do. We could have tried to delve deeper, but we were running out of time, and we were trying to hit this deadline of like something combined with the Fathom events anniversary and stuff like that. So we were trying our best to just make sure we we included all that we could.
So, were you proud of how the storylines turned out in the end, and what about the Blu-ray as a whole?
Yeah, I was very happy with the Blu-ray. And like everything, I always feel like I deliver my work print. I put everything into trying to create the best features possible, but they're never what I consider to be my best. So there's many things that I wish that I could do different. But I was happy with it, and I was happy that Britt was happy with it, and I was happy that we were able to invested so much time and to try to assemble these scenes. This is not like there was a tape with a whole scene on it. This was like tapes after tape after tape of different takes, different angles, different scenes, and I really tried my best to get in the head of what she was trying to do with film and try to recreate it the best way possible. I still have all that stuff digitized. I have everything. I have access to everything that I did. But I really tried my best to give it my best. I don't know. It's I'm happy that something out there exists that has even a fragment of what she intended with the film, and that's available for fans to appreciate. And that's ultimately the most important part of this whole project was trying to right a wrong.
So, out of curiosity, are there any other projects you have in the pipeline at Ballyhoo Motion Pictures that you're excited about?
Yeah, I'm always busy working on stuff. There are, but they haven't been announced, so I can't really say. This year I've worked on several longer form documentary projects for different releases, like Renfield and stuff like that. And I've been working a lot on these Golden Princess titles, so these Hong Kong films from the 80s and 90s, like Hard Boiled, Better Tomorrow, Kill. So I've been busy on that slew of stuff. There's a project that's coming up that I was really passionate about, but I can't really say because it hasn't been announced.
Yeah. Do you have any words of inspiration or encouragement to aspiring filmmakers?
I get asked that question a lot, and as a person that has always wanted to be involved in film since I was 5 years old, it's all I ever wanted to do in my life. I've never really veered from that. I learned the most from creating some kind of film, whether it's a documentary or it's fictional. I learned the most by doing, and I always say doers do, dreamers dream. I always ask of people that want to get involved in filmmaking to do two things. Do it, create things, create horrible short films, implement horrible ideas, and really through that mess that you create, learn how to manipulate those ideas and learn how they work, learn what made it not the right direction, so then you can kind of figure out what will work for you and telling your story. That's always the thing that's important. And I think the other aspect is really watch movies. Don't watch just what's available at your local cinema. Don't watch what's available on streaming, but it was just like find movies that interest you way to the silent era. Find things that will help you understand this medium that has existed for so long and has created some of the most amazing visionary things that you never even dreamt of. People in the silent era would never think that this would become an art form that was so impactful and filled with so many different ideas and different technologies have come together and grown with it and have created whole worlds that look as real as the one that we open our eyes to every morning. morning when we'll wake up. And I feel like you really do have to do and really figure yourself out. You know, I mean, if you're going to be a runner, then you have to learn to walk. You have to get up and move your legs, understand how they work. You have to fall down. You have to get back up. And I feel like it's the same with this. It's the same with everything. Go out there, make mistakes, make big mistakes. You know, learn from them, and it builds character, and it makes you. I think it makes you a better storyteller.
So, finally, are there any last words you'd like to say to Thomas fans, young and old?
Yes. The time I spent on that island that was created, you know, from a very visionary storyteller. The importance of sustaining that vision and those stories and passing them along from generation to generation is the best way that I think you can respect not only Thomas as a creation, but the creators responsible for Thomas. So, you know, pass all that on. If you have kids, pass it to your kids. If they have kids, pass it to your grandkids. But try to, you know, keep it alive and keep your hopes alive. You know, now more than ever, we need that sincerity. We need that truth of heart. And, you know, it's a rare thing to find. And the fact that it exists in all these different mediums and within all these different stories, it's very magical. And I feel like, you know, we need to appreciate it, cultivate it, and, you know, and make sure it has a life beyond our years.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. I'm sorry this has taken forever to make this work. Part of me, it's hard because it's like it's upsetting too. So I found it very upsetting when she passed.
Some years ago, a London doctor said to me, "You know, Britt, until the day you drop, go on doing what you're doing," because he said, I find that 70% of the people who come in to my clinic who are suffering from chronic depression are families who've come over, often from the Middle East, where the tradition of gathering together and telling each other stories was just part of family life. Over they go, and that all gets wiped out for one reason or another from their lives. I think that situation is spreading everywhere, and each of us needs to do something to bring back real human flesh and blood contact and storytelling into every family's life.
Special thanks to Daniel Griffith for taking the time to sit down with me for this interview. Believe it or not, there may be some more magic news coming from me very soon. In the meantime, I'd like to point out that there's more stuff left to find from Thomas and the Magic World that was lost on the cutting room floor. And it may have already surfaced, but it is once again lost. If you want to learn more about that, check out this video over here, where I talked about it in more detail. Otherwise, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.